Salvage by user Rantarian. Chapter 5. Dead Man's Switch. What kind of little trip? Adrian asked suspiciously. There wasn't any reason for the little bald dictator to get Cheer to put questions to him, or to let him know about travel plans. Not unless you considered that Adrian had some kind of friendly relationship with Cheer that he didn't share with Beckmer, and that this was expected to provide some sort of leverage over him. It was almost like the Courtai knew about friendship and trust without understanding how they actually worked. He didn't say, Cheer answered, but I'd be hesitant to trust anything he says. Adrian nodded tersely, although he was glad that Cheer shared his mistrust of the unpleasant little alien. Ever since coming amongst aliens, he'd never been entirely certain that he was picking up on things that were actually there. Mate, back on Earth, there's a saying about something looking and smelling like bullshit. Oh? Cheer asked. What's the saying? Adrian faltered at that. Normally people knew the implications of something looking and smelling like bullshit. It means it's bullshit. All lies. Total crap. That is a terrible saying, Cheer said with some disappointment. What do you intend to do? I'll ask Trioffa what's going on, Adrian decided. She's usually a bit more upfront about what's actually going on. She is as duplicitous as Beckmer, Cheer stated in annoyance, if not more so. You should take it as a rule to never trust a Courtai. Well, she did keep me alive, Adrian reminded him. That counts in her favor. Cheer shook his head vigorously, trying to mimic the human movement of emphatic denial and succeeding brilliantly. No, that's just more bullshit. You're a human. You're the most dangerous thing on two legs, and they wanted you to help defend this ship. The rest of us they had to enslave, but... Wait, come again? Adrian interrupted. Enslaved? There was a heavy pause as Cheer hesitated, clearly shocked. Nobody told you? We've all got cerebral detonators, bombs in our heads. One wrong move and blam, it's all over. Hot anger rose in Adrian's gut. He could feel it bringing on the edge of his temper and clouding his judgment. He liked Cheer well enough, and he didn't like Beckmer at all. But he hated slavery. And right now, the image of pounding the little gray alien's head into mush was all too tempting. How long has this been going on? He asked, nearly growling the question. How long has that little fucker had you in his claws? We were abducted to be brought here as slave soldiers, not long before you emerged from the medical bay, Cheer explained. We were told our situation, and that we'd be released if we behaved ourselves and did our work. And you trusted him? Adrian asked with some surprise. Not at all, Cheer scoffed. But so long as there's a chance... So long as there's a chance you won't fight back, Adrian finished for him, understanding completely. Hope could really fuck a man over when it was used against him. And it looked like the Courtai was clever enough to know that much. How about I go over and rip his fucking arms off, then slap him to death with them? Maybe that would work, Cheer said, if the entire salvage crew didn't have access to the kill switch. Do you think that you can contain them all before they blow our brains out? Are you so sure that you also don't have a detonator? They simply neglected to tell you about? Are you so sure that you also don't have a detonator that they simply neglected to tell you about? If you attack Beckmer, he'll either threaten to kill you with a detonator, or the rest of us. You're saying he'll use your lives to protect his own from me, Adrian said, his body tense with restrained anger. It makes sense for a bastard like him. And as a result, Cheer continued, we are, as you might say, proper fucked. Adrian pondered the matter for a brief moment, then broke into his predatory grin. Not necessarily. Go get the others. I've got a plan. No, Trioffa snapped. I've told you 4 times, Beckmer. I haven't seen them. I will let you know if they contact me at all. But if you really want to talk to them, why don't you take the walk down to the reactor room and check in on them yourself? She disconnected the call in anger, then forced herself to return to calm professionalism. Lately, there had been too little of that, and although much of it could be blamed on the human as a catalyst, Trioffa considered the rest of it to be solely the result of Beckmer's poor decision-making. Wherever the 2 technicians were hiding, she thought, they'd better be working on the reactor. Nothing would save them from her fury if they'd spent this time slacking off when hunters could be closing on their location for all they knew. Could this day get any worse, she said to herself, and then jumped in her seat as she was startled by the opening door. It was just the Ruaher female. Trioffa relaxed. After Beckmer's most recent rant, she didn't think she had the mental strength left to deal with the human. But the Ruaher were a straightforward species. Not especially bright for the most part, but acceptably logical in spite of their attachment to emotion and empathy. Can I help you? Trioffa asked as the slave soldier stepped into the room. The girl had a kinetic gun, but it was slung at her side and she seemed nervous rather than aggressive. Is something the matter?
There are 2 things I really need to know, the Ruahir female said, coming closer. 2 things that could be very important to both of us.
Triafa frowned. What are you talking about? Is this some kind of trick? Do not forget my power over you.
Ah, said the Ruahir, flinching back. I had not forgotten. In fact, that is part of why I came to see you. The human has found out about our cerebral detonators. He wasn't pleased, and is on his way to see Beckmer.
What? Triafa exclaimed. Why didn't you say something sooner?
Beckmer will undoubtedly threaten him with our deaths. Unless you've got one in the human's head as well, of course. But I don't want to die, and I thought maybe you could help, the Ruahir female rambled. Maybe I can help you. I'm a friendly voice, after all. I could calm him down.
Yes, Triafa said, still shaken from the revelation. That's an excellent suggestion. If you can manage it, I'll be certain to put in a good word for you with Beckmer. The Ruahir female's attitude shifted immediately from defeat into anticipation.
By that I take it that he doesn't have a cerebral detonator as well.
What? Triafa asked, off balance at the sudden shift in behavior. No, How dare you?
My second question, Triafa, the Ruahir said confidently,
taking an unmarked canister from her pocket with her thumb held down on the mechanism on the top.
Have you ever heard of a dead man's switch?
This was a terrible plan, Trikror thought to herself as she held the entirely inert canister in front of her as though it might do something. Adrian had said that normally people would use explosives for this purpose, but for today that role would be served by something that just happened to look the part. So long as Trikror could manage the required deception. Zrypov and Cheer had been sent down to the reactor to take care of the 2 technicians. Adrian had gone after Beckmer personally, and Trikror had been tasked with deceiving the female Cortai. This was a terrible plan, but it seemed to be working. Triafa was eyeing the canister warily. She hadn't moved. It seemed like she did know what a dead man's switch was, and suspected the worst, just like Adrian had said she would.
Looks like you have some idea what this is,
Trikror continued, reciting the lines she had been given with a bit of her own improvisation thrown in.
We built it out of parts from a kinetic gun, so that it will fire a single powerful kinetic pulse in all directions if the mechanism is released. The force will turn us both into a fine paste on the walls.
You would threaten to kill us both? Triafa asked, apparently trying to force some skepticism into her voice and failing miserably. She hadn't once taken her eyes off the canister, and her fear was palpable.
It's Trikror, isn't it? Surely we can work something out. Whether I kill us both depends on whether you try killing us first, Trikror replied. You could start killing the others, but then you'd still be stuck in here with me and an armed kinetic grenade. Not ideal for you, especially when you have to consider whether Beckmer has the same interest in preserving your life that you do.
I assume you are going somewhere with this? Triafa asked peevishly, dropping the pretense of professionalism at last. You can't just be here to stand around threatening me. Trikror had to give her credit for skipping ahead to the better offer. It made this flow a little more easily for her.
I'm glad you asked. You and I will be taking a short walk out to the salvage ship, where we and the rest of the crew are going to have an interesting talk.
You think you can walk in here and threaten me? Beckmer hissed, seething at the sheer audaciousness with which the human had kicked in his door and presented him with the ultimatum. Yeah, Adrian replied coolly, nodding towards the deadly device in his hand. I do. Let's not forget that this grenade will smear you across your office, but the worst it will give me is a bloody nose. Beckmer practically shook with rage. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been so angry, or the last time he'd been so completely outsmarted. The threat of explosive death had been intended to be used with the slave soldiers alone. He couldn't have imagined that they would have turned the threat of it so neatly on its head without the human's help. Once again, a human was ruining Beckmer's life, and he was forced to admit that with this, he had come to thoroughly despise them as a species. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen now, Adrian continued, entirely in calm control of the situation. We're going to go to your ship, and there's going to be a group discussion. Oh, sneered Beckmer. Just what will we be discussing there? Freedom, perhaps? Revenge? Do you intend to torture me? I considered torturing you, Adrian told him with such bluntness that Beckmer didn't doubt it. The others talked me out of it, so you already owe them that much. Turns out they'd much rather freedom over revenge. But this is the conversation we need to be having as a group. Get moving! Cheer and Zrypov were running, not having wasted any particular time to inspect the charred corpses of the Rikaturpchir, once the pulsing blue searing light had swept across them, and a mechanical voice had said, "No match found." Both of them were smart enough to know a messed up situation when they found themselves in one, and they'd proceeded to extricate themselves out of it just as a hot pulse of concentrated energy blasted into the metal of the walls. "What was that?" Zrypov croaked as they rounded the first corner into cover. He was breathing heavily from sudden exertion. "How should I know?" Cheer asked, his own breathing less heavy thanks to a body more suited to a flat run. "That thing would have killed us, though. I'm willing to bet it was what turned those Rikatupcha into barbecue." "Into what?" Zrypov asked, and Cheer realized that again this was probably something that he alone had discovered from a human. "It's a human thing," Cheer answered weakly. "It's where you cook meat until it is charred." "Sounds wasteful," Zrypov replied disdainfully. "With their dietary demands, you wouldn't think they'd want to waste anything." Rapid metal clanking in the hallway behind them brought them back to the situation at hand. It seemed the thing that had killed the technicians, the thing that had tried to kill them, was in pursuit. "Perhaps now is not the time for such discussions," Zrypov judged. Tricror and Triafa had arrived first in the small meeting room, followed soon by Adrian and Beckmer. And Tricror could see that, like her, Adrian still had the fake grenade held out to look dangerous. The room itself was small and functional, with little besides a table and 6 padded chairs. Every surface was clean, gleaming metal, and the walls were covered in metal tiles whose logical arrangements made you think science. It was at its very core a Kortai meeting room. "All of the important people are here then," Adrian said in obviously fake cheer once the 2 Kortai had been seated. "We may as well get started."
"What about the others?" Tricror asked. "Shouldn't we wait for them?"
"These are the guys in charge, Trix," Adrian replied. "It doesn't matter what the giraffe guys think, once we've convinced this fuckstick in his second-in-command." "We can hear you, you know," Beckmer interjected. "And we know what your demands are."
"Freedom, yes?"
Triafa guessed.
"I can remove the—"
"If we give them that, they'll just kill us," Beckmer interrupted, turning his hard gaze towards Adrian. And Tricror had to admit that the Kortai was brave to do so. She doubted she'd have been able to so much as meet Adrian's gaze had she been in his position. "Isn't that right, human?" "Maybe," Adrian replied. "We could do that, but these people just want to get back to their lives. They're willing to forget about the whole fucking thing if they can live through this little school trip you've got going on here." "And what about you?" Beckmer asked. "Will you forget?" "Oh, you know me, Baldy," Adrian said with a grin. "I'm like a fucking elephant."
"You know we have no idea what that is," Beckmer accused. "You are taking advantage of our ignorance."
"That's right, Baldy," Adrian said, leering over the small gray alien who was still trying to look in charge. "I'm taking advantage of your ignorance, much helped by the fact that you're dumber than a box of rocks. But if you just want to fuck around, maybe your second-in-command would enjoy a field promotion." Beckmer hesitated as he glanced towards Triafa, whom he found looking directly at the table in front of her. Tricror could see he looked desperate, and he wasn't getting any support from his second-in-command when he needed it most. The situation was completely abnormal, so far beyond anything they or Tricror had any experience with, that unless you knew what you were doing, there didn't seem to be any way out. Tricror remained confident because Adrian was confident, although he was probably confident because he was most likely insane. "If you guarantee our safety," Beckmer said levelly, but with black hatred in his expression, "I will have Triafa remove the detonators, and we will release you all at the earliest possible opportunity." Tricror suppressed her excitement, forcing herself to remain cool and detached, a completely professional detachment intended to give off the air of dangerousness. Adrian had said that she'd be the cool voice of reason to his violent psychopath, which she had to admit was a lot easier than the other way around.
"That sounds satisfactory, Adrian," she said. "It will need to be done immediately, of course. We can't trust them to leave our sight before then."
"You heard the lady," Adrian said. "Triafa will need to remove the detonators as soon as your technicians join us." The hissing sound of the pneumatics working the door alerted them all to the new arrivals, and Tricror and Adrian turned expectantly as Cheer and Zrypov fought to burst through the door at the same time. Both of them were heaving great gulps of air as they leaned on the walls for support.
"What happened?"
Tricror asked immediately, wincing as she broke character. "Ha!" Beckmer said. "It seems that everything did not turn out as you had planned, human." "The technicians," gasped Cheer, "dead." "What the fuck did you do?" Adrian asked. "They weren't the sort of guys who put up a fucking fight."
"We did not kill them," Zrypov grunted. "They were dead when we found them. We barely escaped the same awful fate."
"They were barbecued," Chair declared, "by a robotic killing machine." There was a tense silence that hung over the room, and Tricror realized that everyone, even the Kortai, were looking at Adrian. "You have got," he said, "to be fucking kidding me." Alright, everybody, that concludes Chapter 5 of Salvage here by user Rantarian. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please give a like. If you're new around here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you feel like doing that so you can get notified when I put out new content, which for the foreseeable future is going to be every day, probably except maybe Saturday and Sunday, maybe even sometimes Saturdays. But that's all I've got for you today, guys. If you would like to help the channel continue to grow, please go ahead and stop by my Patreon, which is linked in the description. If not, totally fine. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope to see you again soon. Bye.